I don't normally take part in Halloween because I'm not fond of the holidays, but I still give out candy to children on Halloween. The day before Halloween, I had stocked up on candy to give away so I would have lots for little trick-or-treaters coming by. I live out of town, so we don't normally get that many trick-or-treaters, but whatever candy is not given out by the end of the night, I would normally eat. It had reached the time that trick-or-treaters would start coming out for candy, so I decided to stay in my living room. That way, it would be easier for me to answer the door. I had gotten a few trick-or-treaters who had came with their parents, but not many. It came the time they would have gone home to count their candy, or do whatever trick-or-treaters do after getting all the candy they want. So, I didn't expect to get any more trick-or-treaters, especially outside of town. Just when I was getting ready to go upstairs, my doorbell rang. I thought it was weird since it was already 11 p.m., but I didn't think too much into it. I went to the front door with my bowl of candy, and there was a kid in a Michael Myers costume. I said, "Cool costume," and handed them a hand full of candy. Once I did, they looked at the candy for a while. I was confused. I assumed they were being greedy and wanted more. I didn't mind though, so I handed them more candy. This time they looked up at me for a second, then walked off. Weird, I thought before shutting my door and going upstairs. I had been laying in my bed on my phone for a few hours when I heard my back door being opened. I live alone, so this was absolutely terrifying. Imagine being home alone laying in your bed at midnight, then hearing your squeaky back door creak open. I yelled into my house to whoever had broken in, or rather walked in, to leave before I called the cops. I got no answer, of course, but I never heard anyone leave. That was the moment I heard a nightmare-ish laugh. It echoed throughout the whole house. I ran to my bathroom, it being the only door in my house with a lock. As soon as I was in there, I locked the door. I heard loud footsteps come upstairs and stop right at the bathroom door. They started banging really hard on the door. Then I heard them scratching at the door with what I had thought to be a knife. I screamed at them that I was on the phone with the cops and they'd better leave before they got there. That's when I actually got on the phone with the cops. I heard someone say, in a really deep and scary voice, that they just wanted some candy. I didn't answer. I just stood in the middle of bathroom open-mouthed, scared of whoever the man outside the door was. They walked away after saying that, but I didn't get out of my bathroom until the cops were there. Once I got out, the cops handed me a Michael Myers mask and asked, "Is this yours?" My eyes opened as wide as humanly possible. I asked them where they had found it. They said they found it sitting on my table, downstairs, in my kitchen. I told them it wasn't mine, and that it belonged to a strange trick-or-treater I had gotten. Way later than anyone would normally be out. I felt like an idiot. Of course, I couldn't have gotten an actual trick-or-treater to my house at 11 p.m. I'm scared for this Halloween. I'm in fear of the man returning and doing whatever he was going to do to me last Halloween. I'm absolutely terrified. That's how Halloween became the scariest day of my life. It was a quiet Thursday night, a kind of quiet that only small towns know, where even the air feels still and every sound seems louder than it should. I was the only one left in the building. The projectionist finishing up another late shift at the local cinema. The time was a little after 1 a.m. Everyone had gone home hours ago. The lobby lights were off. The popcorn machines were silent. And I was alone, surrounded by the hum of the projectors, the faint buzz of the exit signs, and the echo of my own footsteps on the tiled floor. That week, the new movie arriving for setup was The Ring. I didn't know much about it, just that the trailer seemed eerie, and people said it was one of those films that gets under your skin. It was mid-October, Halloween season, the perfect time for something unsettling. When my work was done, reels built, trailers attached, film checked, I still had one job left: the QC watch. It meant I had to watch the movie myself, start to finish, to make sure it ran perfectly. No scratches, no flickers, no sound issues. But that also meant sitting alone in a dark, empty theater, past midnight, watching a horror movie. Still, it was part of the job. So I walked down the long hallway toward the auditorium. The lights dimmed behind me, one by one. The further I went, my footsteps echoed against the walls. A lonely, metallic rhythm that followed me all the way to the door. I started the projector. The first trailers began to play, bright flashes of light filling the darkness. And then silence as the movie began. That moment always gave me a strange feeling. Being in a massive room filled with rows and rows of empty seats, with nothing but a single beam of light stretching across the darkness toward the screen. But that night, the silence felt different. Heavier. Like the building itself was holding its breath. I sat near the middle of the theater, my legs pulled in slightly, trying not to let my imagination run wild. The sound of the film filled the room. And as the story of The Ring unfolded, the cursed videotape, the 7 days, the girl in the well, I started to feel something I rarely ever felt at work. Fear. The part that really got me wasn't what most people talk about. Not the tape, not even the TV scene. It was a smaller moment. They were on a ferry boat in the movie. The wind howling, the sea churning. The main character walked past a trailer, carrying a horse. Out of nowhere, the horse started thrashing violently. Its hooves slammed against the metal walls, echoing through the speakers, so loud it felt like the whole room was shaking. Then, in a burst of panic, the horse broke free, sprinted across the deck, and jumped straight into the water. Gone. It wasn't the jump that scared me. It was the sound, the raw panic in the animal. Something about that scene hit differently when you're sitting alone at 1 a.m. in total darkness with no one else around. As the film continued, I realized I had pulled my knees up onto the seat without noticing. I was curled up, like a kid trying to make himself smaller, hoping nothing in the dark corners of the theater noticed him. Every whisper, every creak of the building felt amplified. I could almost imagine someone standing behind me, watching, but I didn't dare look back. And when the movie reached its final moments, that cursed image, the static, and then the girl crawling out of the television, I was done, completely frozen. I remember holding my breath as she stepped closer to the screen, her hair wet, her face hidden. And then, when she looked up, I swear, I could feel her eyes on me. That was enough. The credits rolled, but I couldn't move. The silence after the film ended was worse than the movie itself. Just the low, mechanical hum of the projector spinning down, and the faint ticking of the film reel as it slowed to a stop. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. Every instinct screamed to get out, to leave the theater lights off, skip the cleanup, and just run. But I had a routine, and I tried to stick to it. Shut down the system, check the reels, lock the doors. My hands were shaking the entire time. When I finally stepped outside, the parking lot was pitch black. No streetlights nearby. Just my car sitting alone in the distance, surrounded by shadows. The walk across that lot felt longer than it ever had before. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see a pale figure following me. But there was nothing. Only the sound of gravel under my shoes and the wind moving softly through the trees. I unlocked my car, slid inside, and sat there for a moment, staring at the cinema lights still faintly glowing in the distance. I didn't go home right away. I just sat there, trying to calm down. When I finally got home, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw static, a flicker, a shadow moving closer. So I stayed awake until the sun came up. Lights on, TV playing quietly, pretending that everything was fine. That night still lingers with me. It wasn't just a scary movie. It was the silence after it. The loneliness of being in a place meant for hundreds of people, when you're the only one there. Somehow, that makes every whisper sound like a voice, and every shadow look like it's breathing. And that was my Halloween horror story. A real one, and one I'll never forget. Allison's favorite holiday was Halloween. Even at the age of 21, she never grew out of the Halloween spirit. She still dressed up in scary costumes, went to pumpkin patches with her friends, and even enjoyed the horror movie marathons that played all October long. But this Halloween was a little different. Because of her demanding career in pharmaceuticals, Allison was now living in a small town in Pennsylvania that was over 2 hours away from her family and friends. That meant most holidays and birthdays she spent celebrating them alone. These were her exact thoughts that Halloween evening as she made her way up the path to her front door. Kids in costumes were shouting for joy, houses down as the neighbors handed out candy. Hurrying her pace, not wanting to miss the joy of giving candy out to the trick-or-treaters, Allison unlocked her front door and opened it. Before she stepped in, there, shoved under her welcome mat, was a white envelope. Curiously, Allison bent over and picked it up. There was no return address and only 2 words written on the front. For Allison, wondering who would have left this here, she tore. However, being the optimist that she proudly was, she decided that this Halloween she was going to thoroughly enjoy herself, despite being alone from family and friends. Penned the envelope, pulled out a letter, and began reading it. Dear Allison, how are you? I hope all is well and you're enjoying your new home. I'll keep this brief because there isn't much time. Tonight, Halloween night, be sure by 10 p.m. to lock all your doors and windows, and whatever you do not answer your door after 10 p.m. I don't care what you hear or what you think you hear. Do not open your door. Things beyond both our comprehensions will occur, and you must not open the door at any cost. Please heed my warnings. I only wish for your well-being. Be safe, stay strong, and do not open your door after 10 p.m. With love, your Aunt Cynthia. Allison read and reread the letter. She glanced up and down her street, trying to identify a prankster or mischief. She didn't have time to worry about this poor attempt at a cheap scare. Not only did she not have an Aunt Cynthia, but the trick-or-treaters were only 3 houses away, and she needed to prepare the candy bowl. It was her first Halloween in this neighborhood, and she wasn't going to be the neighbor who neglected the children their sugar rush. She made her way inside. her mind quickly occupied with the Halloween joy, trick-or-treaters, and a night of handing out candy. Any thoughts of ominous warnings and cheap scares were long gone. By 9:15 p.m., Allison's candy bowl was nearly empty. Despite being alone, she was having a great Halloween night. She bounced back and forth from answering the trick-or-treaters and watching the horror movie marathon on TV while enjoying a glass of red wine. By 9:45 p.m., she decided to call it quits. There hadn't been a trick-or-treater for nearly an hour. This was a young neighborhood after all. Most of the kids were all sugared out and in bed. Plus, John Carpenter's Halloween was the next movie on TV, and she did not want to miss 1 second of that. She quickly got up and went to turn off her front porch lights, signaling to any tricker or treaters out there that she was closed for business. As she made her way to the front door, she noticed that it was 10 p.m. The letter's ominous warning came flooding back to her memory. But in her wine-induced state of being, she simply laughed at the poor attempt of a scare. As her hand went to the switch that would turn off her front porch lights, there was suddenly a knock at the door. "Trick or treat," Allison heard from the other side of the door. She reached for the doorknob and almost opened it. Almost. There was something odd about the voice. Something off. Allison cleared her throat. "Sorry, all out of candy." She expected whoever was at the door to go away. What she did not expect was to see her doorknob begin to turn. She quickly turned the lock and slid the deadbolt across. "I said, I'm all out of candy, I'm sorry. Try another house." Silence hung there, like a dense fog. "Allison, open the door." The wine buzz she was enjoying all night dissipated. She took a step back and pulled out her phone. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." There was another long drawn-out pause. "Allison, we both know they can't help you." Her front door shook violently. The frame siding even began to splinter. Wood chips spilled to the ground. In a haste, she dialed 911. When she painstakingly explained her situation, that's when the violent attempt to break in ceased. There was an eerie calm. Allison sprinted into the kitchen and grabbed a steak knife. She opened her front door an inch to see if the maniac was still there. And that's when she saw the red and blue flashing lights. Cop cars and ambulances were scattered on the street and lawn of her next-door neighbor's house. She opened her door wider to analyze the situation. A cop came sprinting over to her. "Ma'am, please lock all your doors and windows and stay inside for the night." Allison obliged, but not before noticing that the officer's uniform was covered in dark red. She relocked her door and sat on her living room couch, waiting for sleep to come. It never did. The next morning, the local news had the answers to Allison's questions. The newscaster was calling it the Halloween Massacre. Allison's next-door neighbors, the Doyles, were mutilated beyond recognition. They were a family of 6, a mom and dad, and 4 kids, all gone from this earth. What was worse, the newscaster explained, was that there was no fingerprints, no DNA, or any other forms of evidence left behind. Just a family massacred with no explanation of how. Allison watched the news unfold throughout the morning, tears stinging her eyes. She scrambled through her kitchen trash until she found it, the letter left on her mat. She dialed her mother, burning with questions. "Do I have an Aunt Cynthia?" There was a pause. "Allison, is everything all right? Where is this coming from?" "Answer the question. Do I have an Aunt Cynthia?" Allison heard her mother gulp. "Technically, yes. Who is she? Why have I never met her?" Her mother sighed. Sweetie, Sinithia was my younger sister. When she was born, her neck caught around the umbilical cord. She suffocated. Allison froze to the spot, her aunt's letter in hand. That's when she noticed that there was more writing on the back that she hadn't noticed before. She turned the letter over and read, Sweetie, there has always been good and evil on the earth. It's up to us to protect our loved ones from the evil. We have never met, not in this life, but I am the guardian of your life. That's what family does. Stay blessed, Allison, and stay safe. Allison folded the letter to her chest. Her Aunt Cynthia was her guardian angel.